In this segment, we're going to add some volume controls to our player. Now, volume actually is very easy to control in the HTML5 audio model. First thing we're going to do is we're going to add a volume up and a volume down button. I'll put these in a separate row just by adding a break like that. And so I'll call this BT button ID equals BTN vol up. Again, using my camel casing where I make the first letter lowercase and then each word that I'm kind of concatenating together gets uppercased. So that's why we get that kind of capital V and capital U in there. And then our second button is going to be BTN vol down. And we'll just label that with volume minus. Looks good to me. Let's just check the interface in a browser here, make sure it looks like I intended it to look. That's good enough. So now we're going to go back to our init, and we're going to attach listeners to those particular buttons. So I'm going to grab the ID here, and then we're going to use, right here on line 17, I'm going to insert our getElementById method for button volume up. We're going to add the event listener, click, and we'll call the function vol up false. And then, of course, we need one for volume down. I always like to use IDs and variable names that make as much sense as possible because, you might look at this code a month or two from now, and the less time you have to spend figuring out what it is that you did originally when programming, the better. So now we've got our listeners. So now I can insert some volume controls in here. Add the comment as I typically do. All right, so our function names here are going to be vol up and vol down. Now, there's two approaches you can take to this. The volume within HTML5 ranges from 0.0, which is silent, to 1.0, which is full volume. So I can either create a global variable that tracks the volume, or I can put an upper and lower limit in each of my volume controls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if, and then we get the volume from player.volume is less than 1, then player volume plus equals 0.1. So we're going to add 1/10. We'll do the opposite for volume down. Write the function here. So we'll test again. If player volume is greater than 0, only then will we allow it to go down. So player volume minus equals 0.1. So essentially, we've created 10 steps of volume. Now, the other thing to consider here is, we've got both of these named. How do we have another function named volume down here? I must have done some copy and pasting or went a little crazy. Let me get rid of that. Okay, there we go. So we've essentially created 10 steps of volume, anywhere between 0 and 1, which are the boundaries of the volume property. So that sounds like it's done right. Now, let's just, to be safe here, I'm going to use console log player.volume. If we need this for debugging, great. If not, we'll just remove it later. And this works with the developer console or Firebug to output the volume properties value at any given time. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a shot, and we'll debug if there are any errors. So we'll go ahead and open this in Firefox, which is where I usually like to start my testing. And we'll open our friend Firebug here, and we'll look at the console since I was Oops. There we go. We'll keep looking at the console right here. So we'll start playing. And oops, we got an error right here. Player is undefined. So how did we do that? Because in the onload function here, we got document by ID player. And that's getting the actual player from the audio tag. Let me take another look at this. And as usual, the problem was not one of great consequence, but one enough to put us off track. Just a typo there in the word listener. Listener is correct. And let's go ahead and try it again in our application. And there's the music. So I'm going to wait for the singer to come up a little bit here. And let's try reducing the volume. And the volume went down. Hit play. And the volume goes up. And you can see here, if I have console all, each time I change the volume, now 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, full volume, and then back down. And when we get down to 0, it's not going to let us go below 0. And if we do, we get this index or size error. So here, it looks like we've got a small problem because it's letting us go below the 0. Let's see what's going on here. So we go back here. If player.volume is greater than 0, then we're subtracting 0.1. So it looks like what's happening is, since we're getting kind of these rather strange numbers here, when we subtract 1, we still have 0.000014 left, and then if I go below that, we start having a problem. So it's not a perfect algorithm. We certainly could correct for it, but for right now, what we could do is do an else like this and set player.volume equal to 0. And that should solve the problem. Conversely here, we could set player volume equal to 1, and that'll solve it for the upper limit in case it becomes a problem there. Again, not a big deal. Your player would actually work fine without doing that. This just makes the results a little bit neater. So now you understand how to control volume using JavaScript in HTML5 for your MP3 player.